West Local Immigration Partnership, the group that's planned this event today. So I'd like to welcome everybody to our 4th annual professional development event. They seem to get bigger every year. This is online for the first time. And the theme of our event this year is employability, COVID-19 and beyond, building a path forward. And I'm just thrilled that everybody is able to join us today. So we'd like to start today by honoring the land that we are on, which has been the site of human activity since time immemorial. It is the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River First Nations. Ontario is covered by 46 treaties and other agreements, and is home to many Indigenous nations from across Turtle Island, including the Inuit and the Métis. These treaties and other agreements, including the One Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, are agreements to peaceably share and care for the land and its resources. Other Indigenous nations, Europeans, and newcomers were invited into this covenant in the spirit of respect, peace, and friendship. We are all treaty people. Many of us has come here as settlers, immigrants, newcomers in this generation or generations past. We are mindful of the broken covenants, and we strive to make this right with the land and with each other. We would also like to acknowledge those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. And so we honor and pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin and descent. So before we get started on our agenda today, our group member Yasmin would like to send out a quick poll with 3 questions to everybody listening in.
So you also see a poll, 3 polling questions on your screen. Please scroll down for question number 3 if you can. Can you see it right now? Yeah, okay, I see response coming in, so I know it's working.
It's working fine here.
Sounds good. Whoa.
So we'll wait for a minute to get those results. I'm curious to see what everybody says.
So I'll give people 10 more seconds. We have an 89% response rate right now. So okay. So I'm going to end the poll and then share results. Wow. So 98% of you are attending from home, but one of you is in the office. And then, okay, I see who's waving the hand, Helen. And then the second question, what's the level of comfort? So 21 of you say very comfortable, and then comfortable, and then 4 of you say not comfortable at all. There are few it says not applicable. I think maybe you're not really serving clients in your work setting. And then home, and then the number 3 is like almost half. Half of you are looking forward to go back, but the other half is no. Yeah, so just give you some idea about where we are and who we are. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for participating in that. So before I give our event outline and we get started, we'd like to give you a quick background on the Toronto West Local Immigration Partnership and our employment group. So we're funded by Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, and the Local Immigration Partnership, or LIPs, are tables that bring together representatives from diverse stakeholders to plan initiatives designed to meet newcomer settlement and integration needs. So here in Toronto, there are actually 4 quadrant LIPs, North, East, South, and West. We're the West group. Based at local nonprofit agencies, and there's a City of Toronto's newcomer office at City Hall as well. So today's event was planned by the Toronto West Lips Employment Group, AirCAG, comprised of staff from various nonprofit social service organizations based in the West End of Toronto. So along with planning these annual professional development events, this is our fourth, our other current main initiative is the Employment Flyer Bank, which many of you may be familiar with. It's an online resource for frontline settlement and employment staff to seek out opportunities for their clients, but also to share their agency's programming. So I'd now like to ask Yasmin again if you could share our quick Flyer Bank promotional video, and then there's going to be one more poll question.
Yes, okay. Yep, so just for those who might have not seen the video, you all can see the video, right? I'm going to play it right now. It's like 1 minute 38 seconds.
Sure, yeah. Great, thank you, Yasmin. Yasmin actually designed that wonderful video. So,
Am I launching the second poll right now? Is that the time? Yes.
Yes, go right ahead.
It's about the Flyer Bank.
Perfect. Last poll question.
So another 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm ending the poll. And then here's the result. So, well, I'm just focusing on 28 of you, like about 44%. Know about the Flyer Bank for the first time. I think it's, yeah. If you want to know more about this and curious about how to submit flyers, feel free to reach out to us. I think on the event registration page, you have Amar's contact information, or just reach out to, just Google Toronto West TWLIP and you'll find our contact information on the website. Okay, yeah, thanks.
Great, thanks everybody. So let's get started. I'll quickly go over the event outline and housekeeping. So I am pleased that we will be first hearing from our keynote speaker, labor market expert Christian St. Cyr, joining us from BC, where the weather is much nicer than here. And Christian's going to be speaking for about 15 minutes, and we'll have a 10-minute Q&A directly afterwards. And we're then going to hear from our sectoral panelists, followed again by a Q&A monitored by one of our wonderful action group members, Dominic. And Manoj is going to be monitoring the chat. And we're very excited to hear from our human resource panelists, who will each be speaking for around 10 minutes. So we have Ashima Suri, Head of Operations from Presto, We have Tatiana Lazareva from Unicorn Experts and Christine Dubois-Cross from Canadian Association for Mental Health. After a brief closing and an evaluation link that would be put up, our event's going to end at 3:30. So I'd like to remind people that the event is being recorded and the recording will be available. To please stay on mute, but you are very welcome to keep your videos on or off, as is your preference. And throughout the presentations, you can use the chat function to type in questions, and our group member Manoj from the YMCA is going to be monitoring that chat box and reading out any questions that were typed at the end of the presentation. And also following the presentation, we'll of course give people the opportunity to turn mics on if you'd like to prefer to ask a question orally that way as well. So I would like to introduce our keynote speaker. Over the past 20 years, Christian St. Cyr has established himself as a leading national expert on job search and labor market information. As publisher of the Ontario Labor Market Report, Christian advises thousands of career professionals province-wide, and he regularly works with representatives of business, education, and government on developing proactive solutions to labor market challenges. Christian has developed a dynamic understanding of effective job search and the various needs of local employers. And this unique experience has established him as a well-respected public speaker and media commentator on employment and labor market related topics. And Christian, we're going to turn this over to you to share the PowerPoint presentation.
Thanks so much, Megan. I really appreciate it. But before I begin, I just wanted to say thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. I have a passion for labor market information, and more importantly, I have a passion for people making informed career choices, whether it's in job search or career planning or choosing education. But I feel like there's something I need to clarify right off the bat, which is that I am not in British Columbia for a vacation. I feel like people need to clarify those things these days. I have been bubbling with my children who go to school out here since March. And so, yeah, there's nothing pleasurable about that. Sorry, I should have pointed that out. I did know that. I was curious about something. My wife and I get together with some friends every now and then on Zoom, and we've been doing this since the pandemic began. And yesterday there was just this malaise of, people just feeling like bummed out, and like, is anybody really just tired of this? And that's very different than how it was when this all began. And maybe look up the 5 stages of denial if you've ever heard of them. And the first one is, or 5 stages of grief. And the first one is denial, then it's anger, then it's bargaining, and then it's depression. And I would say I've gone through all of those multiple times, many times over the last 10, 11 months. And the last stage is acceptance. And I kind of feel like we're in depressed acceptance now. But the great news is, I want to talk about good things. I want to talk about how the labor market is going to be better for people. And I truly believe this. I think that we are getting into a situation where the labor market will be much improved. And everybody can see that, I gather? Just a nod would be great. Perfect. I feel like we're getting into a phase. Well, we are already in a phase. Before the pandemic happened, there was about 150,000 unfilled jobs in Ontario. There are still unfilled jobs. We are in the middle of a skills crisis, a skills shortage, because we just haven't had enough workers to fill the people who've been leaving the labor market. And that's going to get exponentially harder in the next 4 months. So I'll talk a little bit about why that is. But if there's 3 things I want you to take away today, and by the way, all of you will have access to this PowerPoint presentation, so don't feel like you need to scribble it all down. I sent off a PDF copy to be shared with you. I believe truly that the labor market will be strong for skilled workers, not just in the year to come, but in the years to come, that this is going to get exponentially more so. I believe that the most secure jobs will involve technical expertise. So whether you're an engineer or a doctor or a nurse or a graphic designer or a tradesperson, you're going to have that expertise, but it's also going to involve your personal qualities, those things that make you uniquely human. And I'll talk about how you can capitalize on those things. And the last thing is, the most employable workers will be those engaged in professional development and networking. And you're halfway there, because the very fact that you're choosing to participate in this today shows you have the right attitude. And that is something that's highly valued by employers, but it also makes people far more employable in the labor market. So why is this situation going on? Well, this is a graph. We did our last census in 2016. So it's a little out of date, but it gives you a sense. So the green bars you see there, the flat ones, represent the percentage on either side of men and women in each age category. And the light green line represents where we're going to be 20 years from now. Now, historically, this would look a lot more like a bell, or at least the top half of it from people 35 onwards, where you always had a huge number of young people at the very bottom, and then a bulk of people, and then far fewer people typically over the age of retirement. But because people are living longer and having fewer children, our demographics are getting totally thrown off. And this is unique to Canada. It's unique to the United States. It's unique to Europe and Japan. It is not so in other parts of the world. In the Middle East, half the population is under the age of 25. And so this is a challenge for us in terms of being able to find the workers we need. Right now, if you look at people who are going to be graduating in the next 10 years, only half of them are going to be able to fill the jobs that are out there. We need to look to immigrants. We need to look to people moving from other provinces. We need to steal people from the Maritimes. That's what it comes down to. I mean, what did they ever do for Canada? Nothing. We need people to move here from other provinces, but we also need to engage people who are not engaged right now, people whose skills are going lost in the labor market. And that's going to be a big trend for us as well. This is sort of how it maps out. We're looking at just under 3 million jobs in Ontario over the next 10 years. 69–70% of that is just to be replacing workers who are leaving the labor market. Right now, baby boomers, who make up the bulk of that bell that I just showed you, are between the ages of, let me do the math again, 54 and 74 years old. And so those who haven't retired already will likely be retiring in the next 5 to 10 years. And so a lot of the job creation is just filling jobs that people are going to leave. But our economy is growing, the country is growing, and so 31% of those jobs are going to be because the economy is expanding, and those will be much more skilled jobs. This is what I think is really critical, and I've seen this change over the last 10 years. Going forward, the largest number of jobs are going to be jobs that require a diploma, a certificate, apprenticeship, really training on a college level of at least a year to preferably 4 years in a specific occupation a lot of the time. Another 36% is going to be jobs that require university education, maybe something specific like a nurse or a doctor or a pharmacist or an accountant, but maybe something really general where a person gets a degree in communications or in history or in something else, but that becomes a platform for a professional career. Where we see the whole labor market eroding is jobs that require high school graduation or something trained on the job to do that job, 1 in 5 jobs, or jobs that don't even require high school graduation, and that's 3%. And I've seen both of those numbers shrink significantly in the last 10 years. And so I always caution people, even though I think that the labor market is very optimistic, I think people need to be cautious that they have education and training, that if they're thinking about going back to school, that they're planning that out really well. We're in the, I want to say in the midst of COVID. I like to think that we're close to the end of COVID. Like I like to think that we're almost in spring, even though it's still 32 days away. Not that I'm counting or anything. But these are the industries that have come back the most since COVID hit. And so utilities is number one. Don't read too much into that because not many people are employed in the utilities section. But the next two are the ones that are really critical. Professional, scientific, and technical services. It's almost 2.5–3% above where it was before the pandemic hit. Finance and insurance, it's also 2 or 3% now, up above where it was before the pandemic. Manufacturing's almost recovered. Public administration's almost recovered. It's the municipalities and the cities that are really struggling, not the province, not the federal government. Healthcare and social assistance is pretty much back, and the part of healthcare and social assistance that's struggling is the private fee payer end. The public end is well funded in hiring. It's the optometrists and the physiotherapists and the chiropractors where people are putting off that stuff. And then the last area is wholesale and retail, which is kind of amazing, but people have stopped traveling, so now they're shopping more. And And so these are the areas where we've seen the most amount of job regaining. It's hard to say that an industry is good or bad. I could say something like hospitality or tourism is a tough industry. It's going to be tough for years to come, which is likely true. But there will be very skilled jobs in those industries that are really good. Just like there will be very low skilled jobs in these industries that are being automated away and have been automated since the beginning of the pandemic. And so I just encourage you to get the highest level of skill in whatever profession you are. Sometimes people think about going back to college and doing something like an intro to construction, which I think is fine. It can help a person get a laboring job, but that laboring job is not going to be secure or there forever. And so if a person wants to do some sort of entry-level training in construction, I say to them, go out and go that extra step, get apprenticed. We got a skills shortage right now. Employers are going to be more likely to want to apprentice because of that. Build on that, because it's the people who have that entry-level training that are going to struggle. Automation is something we talk a lot about, and I think it is a real challenge and threat. 42% of jobs are at high risk of automation. This came out of Ryerson a couple of years ago, and I think that's something for people to be cautious about. But what I want to draw your attention to is really the 36% of jobs that are very low risk of automation. And you take something like, we've got a few employment career counselors on the line here today. The chances of automation for that occupation are 1 or 2%. It's the same thing for teachers. It's the same thing for doctors and nurses, people who combine a very technical expertise with a lot of very personal service. Those are the jobs that are in that third of jobs that are completely unlikely of being automated. I think where people should be cautious, and like I said earlier, there's no good industries and there's no bad industries, but where I think people should be cautious are things like clerical occupations. That's I think probably one of the areas where we've seen the most amount of automation because of the pandemic, is that people are turning to apps to do work that they typically would have had people on site to do, administrative work. Transportation, we're not there yet, but I think we're in a situation where eventually we're going to have automated vehicles, and that's going to be probably one of the most transformative things to happen to jobs since the Industrial Revolution. Retail, or the computer revolution. Retail is just transforming. I read the other day that 75% of people shopped regularly in retail establishments quite often before the pandemic, and that now has been cut in half. Now, granted, people haven't been able to shop much at all for the last month or so, but people are changing their consumer patterns, and retail will have an impact. There will be retail, but it'll be high-end retail where people have product knowledge and there's a service component to it. I'll give you an example. A company like Staples, for instance, they're changing their stores. Far fewer Staples products, but instead they're putting in offices, meeting rooms, they have computer repair, IT, they have mailing and shipping services, they have printing services. Staples is transforming itself more into a service company than a traditional retail company. And that's what you can expect for a lot of retail companies that continue to exist for decades to come. Food service, just we've seen it. You go into almost any food service restaurant now, and you're either ordering on an app or from a menu board. Of course, the ones that allow menu boards to exist because of COVID. And the last area is natural resources. And that's probably the area that we have seen consistent automation in for years. And it's interesting because you take a sector like the mining sector, where historically, because they have their ups and downs based on commodity prices, they've automated consistently for the last 30 years. So today, the average job in the mining sector pays about $120,000 to $130,000 a year, because they're typically either trades jobs or highly technical jobs. One of the other things that I think is really coming out of the pandemic is the notion of the gig economy. So if you're not familiar with the gig economy, it's people who drive Uber, people who will work for a contract and they'll be on site to do that job and then gone. People who are doing food delivery. Those are our gig economy workers that get a lot of press. But what you can see is that 59%, close to 60% of gig economy workers are providing professional, creative, and administrative services. So while historically they would have worked in marketing or social media, or even something like human resources or accounting for a company, now they're being paid project to project to do that work. There's pros and cons. Some people have a lot of autonomy and make great money doing it. But a lot of times employers do this because they're trying to escape minimum wage, minimum hours, the liability of having somebody work for you all the time. They're trying to minimize their costs. And so I'm not entirely soured on the gig economy, but I think people should be really cautious. I always tell people, if you're going to pursue a gig economy job, make sure that job pays you at least 130 to 150% of what you're going to get if you had that job, because you need to think about employment insurance and WSIB and just having to take care of your own taxes and your own health insurance and all those sorts of things. 33% of people who are in the gig economy are providing a manual personal service. And even though the drivers are the ones who get all the press, 16% of gig economy workers, I think it's 16% because I have pictures over my over that part of the graph, are providing are doing the driving. So it's actually very small. I'm a gig economy worker. I published the Ontario Labor Market Report, and I'm a solo entrepreneur. I have a couple people I pay to assist me, but really these are just some of the apps that I personally use. So Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Hootsuite and Hotwire. I'm trying to recognize all the things, and Expedia and Uber and Constant Contact and SurveyMonkey and Wix and GoDaddy and FreshBooks and Vonage and Stripe. And I deal with CIBC for some reason. I'm not sure why. And these apps are providing a lot of clerical and administrative functions that people used to offer. If you think about the gig economy, I tried to divide it up. So you have traditional jobs like school teachers and retail clerks and restaurant managers, employment counselors, social workers. Then you have people who are traditional self-employed contractors who have been around forever, researchers and landscapers and really tradespeople of any kind, hairstylists, therapists, caterers, people who get paid to do a job, essentially. But then you have this new influx of workers like Uber drivers and Airbnb hosts and fruit pickers and parking drivers at events and virtual assistants, movers and bartenders. People essentially get paid to do a night's job. Now, the province has the Employment Standards Branch in the province, and the federal taxation department has very specific rules about what makes you a contractor, what doesn't. And this new classification violates all those rules. And so we're kind of in a Wild West time where this is a very unregulated part of our economy. And I think regulations will come, but government's been very slow in doing this. And so what I would say is to the gig economy workers, or if you're offered that opportunity, protect yourself. Really know what you're getting into, get things in writing, don't limit your earning potential, because you're probably better off if you're looking at something that pays just a little more than what you'd get if you had that job. Hold out for the job, keep looking for the job. These are just some of the things that I think people need to be cautious of. Revenue Canada has very strict rules. You might be self-employed and then all of a sudden deemed you're not self-employed and have all these fees and fines that you need to pay. Violations of the Employment Standards Act, violations under WSIB, violations of auto insurance coverage, like if you're driving to work, do you have the correct kind of coverage? If you're injured on the way to a gig job, does your auto insurance actually cover you, or should it be WSIB? And if you don't have your own WSIB file, what happens then? Are you declaring HST? Are you charging HST? So there's a lot of things other than just getting paid. I said earlier that I think that it takes, in the future, it takes people who are, what do I say? People with very technical skills, but also people who have those human components. There's a great author named Daniel Pink. Oh, okay, I don't know. There's a great author named Daniel Pink, and he wrote a book many years ago called I forget what it's called, and it's under the picture, so I can't recall what it is. Anyhow, A Whole New Mind. That's what it was. I had to remember, yes. And he came up with these 6 competencies that are things that are uniquely human that technology can't easily do. And so we can be assisted with design, but we can't come up with original design with technology. We can't write story, or at least draw people into the idea of story. We can't create harmony between different departments or different jobs or people doing different things. technology doesn't demonstrate empathy. Technology can't create a fun environment for people to work in, or more importantly, for your customers to feel welcomed into. And technology can't create meaning in the work that we do. And so what you want to do is look for jobs that are heavily focused on requiring empathy or design or fun or play. Just to give you a quick sense, and I realize we're running short of time, so I'm gonna, you'll have this PowerPoint, but these are the jobs that typically have a strong outlook that require university, but you'll see a strong number of management jobs in that. Just like you'll see in the list of jobs that have a strong outlook that require college. Again, managers are in there because managers do require a lot of these competencies in what the work that they do. There's like only about a 6% chance of automation in most management jobs. Yeah. Bank of Montreal did a study and they talked about how the labor market is going to change after COVID. And this is what they came up with, how we work, that for better or for worse, since everybody's apparently moving to the Lakes country, there's going to be nobody left in Toronto by the end of 2021. How we work, more home offices, more blended workforces, more local suppliers, and like meeting venues as an example are going to really take a hit. Food courts, people who are providing services to offices. It's going to change how we shop, more shipping, more local, more driving. I think it's funny that it's more local and more driving, but think about how much people are having delivered to their homes and that's going to become a pretty regular thing. Who's going to struggle? The Bay, department stores, secondary and smaller malls. We'll probably have destination malls, but the smaller malls are going to get redeveloped into retail housing complexes. High density commercial property. I'd say the downtown core is going to really struggle. How we watch, more binging, more global. Who's going to struggle? A lot of those in-person venues, even after COVID is done. I talked to my wife and I said, hey, listen, if we can all get vaccinated by the end of the year, how would you feel about a vacation in the fall? And she just said, I don't feel ready. Even if that's the case, I don't feel ready. So that's going to be something that struggles long-term. How we share, a lot more broadband. My local cable company gave out on me last week, and I was told it would take 10 days for a technician to get here. So I switched to one of the big telecoms, and my wife's like, well, do we want to get tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4? I'm like, tier 1. I don't care what it costs. Well, that's a terrible thing to say, but I really don't, because my entire livelihood depends on good internet connection. How we travel, cruise ships. People are reluctant to get on cruise ships. People are reluctant to destination stuff. We're going to see people a lot more traveling in the country, in the province. How we heal, healthcare is changing. If you've seen a doctor by video camera recently, that's something that's going to be probably more inclined. I think we're going to spend a lot more time planning and thinking and preparing for a pandemic, even if another one doesn't come for another 100 years. How we learn. And who's struggling right now? Schools, some schools have been great at it. Some schools have been not so great. The very fact that we're doing this online for the first time ever is showing how we're learning differently. And then the last thing is more protectionism. You know, when we discovered that we were so reliant on China for so much PPE, that I think that's going to dramatically change. And so I think world trade is going to change. You take a company like, there's lots of Canadian companies that get the vast majority of what they're getting from China. And then when China was the first to shut down, that really impacted their supply chain. You take a company like IKEA, who sources their products from over 100 countries around the world. And so they're much more protected against something like that. So I think we're going to see a reinvestment in manufacturing in Ontario, but it's not going to be what we manufactured 20 years ago. So there's my very quick presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Is there anything in the chat function?
That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, we did. Our colleague Alan, just what you brought up, was having some internet issues and is talking about upgrading to 5.
Yeah.
Not familiar with that one. Yeah, that was so informative. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
If anybody has a question you'd like to ask out loud, please feel free to turn on your mic and do that. Otherwise, Manoj is going to be monitoring our chat box. So please feel free to type some questions as well. We have, I believe, about 10 minutes, a little bit less.
And I'm really bad at opening up chat on Zoom while I'm talking at the same time. So if she wants to pass along any chat question, I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Christian. I'm just trying to find out, but there is no question at this point. But I have a question for you, actually.
Certainly.
Okay, how can an employment counselor find the updated labor market information to cover different industries and especially serving a client when they want to figure out a career path at this point?
You know, it's funny you should say that, because I was dealing with that. I published some form of labor market report for the last 20 years, Ontario specifically for the last 6. And it really struggled. I really struggled with the idea that labor market information was here today and gone tomorrow. And so I thought we need to aggregate this stuff, because first of all, Ontario does not do the best job in Canada on labor market research. Nova Scotia does a better job. British Columbia does a much better job. They're working on that, but they haven't made as much progress as I would hope. But the problem with anything, whether it's the province or Service Canada or any association, is they only aggregate their own information. So last year in 2020, I created Labor Market Online for specifically that purpose. So we do monthly training and we do a weekly newsletter and everything like that. But the crown jewel for me is covering all 16 sectors in Ontario. And so we cover the top occupations, how much they're growing. We have all of the latest news attached to that sector. We have every industry association and all of their research. And so we're aggregating that information. That's what nobody else does. Is everybody's very proprietary. It says, well, this is our information. We're going to share it in this format. On Labor Market Online, we share that with everybody. And we have a large number of organizations that are already members. So I'd encourage you to go to OntarioLaborMarketOnline.com if you're .org. If your organization is already a member, you should be on the front page. But if you're not a member, send me an email. I'm happy to talk about it and see if it can be something that would benefit your organization.
Thank you. Actually, we are already subscribing that.
I would.
Yeah, I was just asking it on behalf of others, just in case people don't know.
Well, then you have a leg up. And like I said, I think it is the crown jewel in it, because I think research does start off industry based, especially for immigrants. Because if you have someone, if you have somebody who's coming as a doctor and their credentials aren't being recognized here at all, then they're thinking healthcare. What can I do in the healthcare sector? And so I think that's why I try to put it with that focus, but with the jobs connection.
Yeah, I have one question in the chat box. Mm-hmm. It says it sounds almost counterintuitive that there is a shortage of skilled labor. And I work with ITPs. I believe that is internationally trained professionals. And at this point, most do not have job after several months of job search. Can you shed light on this?
Yeah, I think it comes down, this is my own opinion, personal opinion, but I think there's a tremendous prejudice that comes against internationally trained professionals. I think employers put a priority on hiring people with Canadian education and Canadian experience, which by definition is prejudicial towards people who are internationally trained. And I know it's a huge challenge. And so when I do work with international professionals, I try to encourage them to get involved in mentorship programs. I try to get them involved. And this is a big challenge, is if a person is an international professional and they're worried about taking a job that's beneath them, no one ever takes away their past experience. And so sometimes it's about credentialing. But what I find is when a person has to take a step down because they moved to a new community, or because they've taken some time out of the labor market, they're trying to get back into it. When a person takes a position that's junior to what they've done in the past, it's usually quite quickly that they're able to rise up to what they have done in the past. So like I said, it is true. Like if you talk about software programmers or nurses or doctors or technicians or technologists, especially in the healthcare sector, there is a shortage on that way, even if the international professional is not getting called. By the way, just as an example, my wife is from the States. She worked at a university. She was the deputy registrar at her university, but she's been working in just sort of a basic job since she and I got married years ago, but she wants to get back into that education. And it's like a brick wall, even though I know those organizations are having a tough time finding people for those roles.
Yeah, thank you. And there's other question. Job seekers are entering the food and beverage manufacturing industry after completing training. what areas should they focus upon once they are in for their career laddering and job stability in the industry?
I think management is a fantastic opportunity, but not everybody's suited to management. That's one of the challenges. Is like, if a person said, is there an area of the labor market that I think people is really secure? I'd say management, or I'd say self-employment. But for both of those, I don't think those are necessarily suited to everyone. So again, I would say, look for a niche skill, because manufacturing is constantly going through this automation process. So look for a niche skill that requires one of those 6 human competencies. Like, can you transition into a marketing role, or can you transition into a human resources role, or can you transition into a sales role? All of those roles within the manufacturing sector should be secure long-term.
Great, thank you so much. I'm watching the time and I see we missed a great question too from Shahina. Would it be all right, Christian? I see you've generously provided your email. Would it be all right if people had questions for you they didn't get the opportunity to ask today because of time? Could they email you those questions?
By all means, send me an email. I'm happy to reply.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Our colleague from Access Community Capital Fund shared a link and additional info on the gig platform economy, so people can scroll up and find that link as well. And yeah, thank you everybody for your comments. Cindy made a great comment too, if people want to scroll up and look at that. So informative. Thank you so much, Christian. I know you have to run, but I hope you can stay with us as long as possible, and we'll make sure you get the recording of the rest of the event.
Thanks. I think I can stay another 10 minutes, but I appreciate it. Thanks.
Megan, you're muted.
Sorry, talking to myself again. I'd like to actually turn it over now to my colleague Dominic from JobStart, one of our wonderful group members with AirCAG, who's going to be introducing our 3 panelists.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's event. Today we have 3 human resource specialists with us speaking about finding employment while in this pandemic. They will discuss what employers look for when reviewing applications and resumes, what we should consider adding to the resumes, and attributes that employers are currently looking for. We have with us Ashima Suri, Head of Operations with Presto. Ashima Suri is Head of Operations at Presto. Presto offers innovative enterprise-grade technologies in the restaurant industry. As a change maker, Ashima Suri thrives on working on building projects from the ground up. She has worked with newcomer populations for 15+ years by providing knowledge on obtaining and retaining gainful employment. We're also going to hear from Tatiana Lazavera, Unicorn Expert. Tatiana is a principal in the Unicorn Expert supply chain and logistics recruitment firm. Tatiana decided to move into recruitment 4 years ago because she wanted to help companies build strong, talented supply chains and logistics teams by providing her in-depth knowledge of the industry. She worked in the field of supply chain and demand planning for 8 years, serving various industries, including retail, manufacturing, and CPG. And finally, we're gonna have Christine Dubois-Cross from CAMH, and Christine Dubois-Cross is an HR professional with over 15 years experience, skilled in attracting, developing, and retaining top talent, required to drive organizational performance in both the private and public sector. Currently, Christine works with the Center for Addictions and Mental Health, known as CAMH, as a recruiter for the past 3 years. She thoroughly enjoys speaking to and hiring passionate and dedicated professionals in the field of mental health. First, we're going to hear from Ashima. If you can kindly hold all your questions until the end, or again, as we've all been saying, you either can say your word, ask your questions verbally by unmuting once they're done, or you can write in the chat box and Manoj will kindly read out your question. So Ashima, if you can take over.
Thank you so much, Dominic, and thank you, Megan, as well, for inviting me here. So I'm going to speak about my own experience working in the tech sector for the past couple of years. So Presto, just as a background, is from the Bay Area. So it's a Silicon Valley built organization. And a couple of years ago, they decided, what would it be like to open up an office here in Toronto? And our first research was really about seeking out newcomers. We know that there's like a rich population of newcomers here, and even just being able to pull people from outside of Canada, it's definitely a lot more easier to do here in Canada than it is in the US. So we did our research and we found that there's a great pool of individuals, highly skilled individuals that we really wanted to tap into. And that's when we went ahead and built an entity out here in Toronto. So for my own work, I just headed that up. I started the whole initiative. And right now we have a small team. It would have been bigger, but the pandemic happened, but we have a small team. The majority of our team members are newcomers. One is from out of Canada and the other ones were already in Canada, and we pulled them in, and they're all great. And it's, as Bio had mentioned, I've been working with the newcomer population in different capacities over the last number of years, but this one was a bit unique in the sense that it was more about the sourcing and the recruitment and, bringing them in and making sure that people felt comfortable, right? Putting them at ease. And then also addressing misconceptions about the tech industry as a whole. I'm not a techie. I don't have an engineering background, but a lot of times I think there's this sort of blanket statement that, you need to have X number of skills. You should know about Androids. You should know about, a whole bunch of other different aspects of tech, which, you start to learn some of the vocabulary that's associated to tech, but you don't necessarily have to be a techie. There's so many other roles, and it's an industry that is booming. It's constantly booming. It's innovative, and that's what makes it really exciting. So when the pandemic hit and COVID happened, we were also at a standstill. Like, we're part of the restaurant industries. Restaurants shut down. It was a big, pause for us to figure out what exactly are we going to do. So the first thing is we paused hiring, right? Like, there was no way we could figure out on how we could justify what we're going to hire at that time, which was quite disappointing for us just because we were at the point of scaling. So we were scaling, especially here in Toronto, and really excited to bring in more newcomers into our Toronto office. So we pressed pause on that, and then we had to just, go back to the bugs and see what works, just like so many other companies had to do, right? Like, just had to go ahead and see what works and what doesn't work. And one of the great things about being in a startup industry is that uncertainty is like a second personality to us. Like, we just know it. We thrive on uncertainty. So what we did was we just came out with more initiatives and innovative programs. Came up with Contactless, which was a big part of our for the last year, since March 2020 to now. We had solutions for hospitals to help with patients to be able to connect with seniors who were in the hospitals during COVID. There was just a lot of different initiatives that we started to come up with. And so one of the things I would recommend is, when you're speaking to clients or any agencies, and you're speaking to clients, is to remember, especially the startup industries, even just any innovative tech industry, is to be idea oriented, right? Have that innovation. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for not just somebody who would come in and do the job and be like, be able to do some of the techs, but able to really make a difference and a change, or have, the confidence to be able to relay an idea and help to build the company. The company is quite small. It's still like 120, 130 people. And so even though we started to hire slowly right now, again, we've started to pick that up. We're just waiting for our fundraising round to be completed. But it's one of those really great things is that when we're looking for people who can build with us, so not separate, not just coming in again, sitting in an office and just doing the work, but really come in and actually be part of the solution, right? Be part of that. During this pandemic time as an organization, especially here in the Toronto team, have really emphasized on building employee engagement, working with our employees, understanding that some of the newcomers who've come in are so new to Canada. They came into our organization and then suddenly they're now told to isolate, and they're feeling a lot more isolated now. So just playing a bigger role in engaging through our virtual Zoom parties. We have wellness programs that I started that we do conduct to help with mental health, which is I feel like a critical player in organizations, which I also believe that, we can't ignore during this time, right? It's put a huge damper in terms of morale, whether you're a job seeker or whether you're just new to an organization and you don't know anyone. Right, so it's just kind of being aware as an employer to assist the people who have come into the organization to help them. So one of the things that we continue to drive into it is to help build leadership capacity within our newcomer population as well. Again, coming in, building leadership, learning management, growing again with the company. And knowing that there's different, and Megan, please tell me about time because I can just keep on rambling. Otherwise, just give me show me a sign just so I don't go over.
Hold up the 2-minute mark.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So yeah, it's just we like to build the leadership because one of the big parts as an employer is also retention. So I know that there's been questions of, is the tech sector, are they hiring? And they are. There's still competition in terms of being able to get in and source really great applicants. And we found that was really interesting because part of the notion was that we won't be able to source out the candidate. We will be able to get the candidates more just based on the pandemic, but actually that's not true. There's a lot of hiring that is actually happening. But what I find is that it's been hard to link up the right candidates with the organizations. And this is where I think partnerships with the employers and the agencies becomes really critical. And I think I'll end it there.
That's actually right on time.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashima. Next, we're going to hear from Tatiana. Tatiana, please.
Thank you for the introduction, Dominic, and Megan, thank you for this incredible opportunity to give back. As a recruiter, I meet with not just my candidates and clients, I also meet with professional communities, I meet with new immigrants and international students because I use that talent pool to either educate them on how Canadian market works or even placements, because I placed an international student a couple of weeks ago and it's an absolutely rewarding experience to make a difference in someone's life. So that's part of my job and that's what keeps me motivated even during these hard days. I came up with this idea that there are 3 major ways of finding a job in the new country, in any country, even if you are local. There are 3 major ways to find a new opportunity. It's basically the number 1 is very intuitive. You apply online, you know exactly what you want and you understand the niche you're in, where your strengths are, and you focus on applying online. The second way is through networking, utilizing networking, especially right now, online networking, primarily on LinkedIn. And the third way is when recruiters or headhunters find you themselves. So ideally, I teach people on how to combine all those 3 ways of getting a new opportunity, because you may be investing all your resources in applying online and your networking may not be as productive as it should be, even if you are new to the country. So I educate candidates on that. So if we look at the online applications, the major challenges that I see, first of all, is that internationally trained professionals have issues with titles. For example, I give you a real life example. Someone who came from India had a title of head of procurement. To me, working in Canada, head of procurement, it's a very senior role, and I would never consider this candidate for something junior or entry level. During the conversation, I realized that she was an entry level person. She was just called head of procurement, even though she reported into procurement manager. So there is a misunderstanding in terms of titles. The same function can be described in a different way in different countries or even different niches of the same industry. So I always educate candidates on study the job description, not with the purpose of applying, but with the purpose of identifying what is it we call it here that you did back home. If you have your strengths, what do they, how are they called? For example, I'm an immigrant myself. I came from Russia in 2009, and my first role in Canada was replenishment analyst. I didn't even know this word replenishment. I didn't even know that job existed. I thought it was demand planner. So I asked my candidates to explore the market and be aware of all available titles, because even when it comes to recruiters, most of recruiters and hiring teams, they search by the title, they search by the industry. So it's very important to keep your LinkedIn profile up to date to make sure it's very clear what you can do and where your strengths are. When it comes to networking, the first thing I tell everyone is that networking is a very slow process. You can benefit from your today's networking maybe 5 years from now, or maybe tomorrow. You cannot expect your network to help you if you don't have the right mindset. It should be give and take balance. Always look at from the perspective what you can do for other people. And especially keep in mind that you are approaching strangers, and it may be inappropriate to ask for their time if they don't even know who you are. So taking networking seriously and approaching it with a perspective that it may be slow, but at the same time, you want to develop this relationship gradually. And there is a whole approach how to do it online using LinkedIn. I recommend, if you know exactly where your strengths are, and especially during pandemic, it's relatively hard to switch industries. Focus on the industry where you either worked or you are working, and have a list of companies. Connect with at least 3-4 people from each organization and start building relationship. Not everyone is going to accept your invitation to connect. And building relationship means staying in touch with people, being aware of what they post about, staying up to date with the industry updates, and of course, being active on LinkedIn from the perspective, if something resonates with you genuinely, make a comment, come up with your own ideas, maybe share an article that you came across. So make sure that people who see your face, they are curious to visit your profile. And when they are on your profile, it says exactly what you want to do, and it says exactly what you are good at. It's a great idea to have your achievements on the resume, because we know that companies are not just looking for the fit for the current role, they are looking for your potential to grow. And nothing tells us about your potential better than your previous achievements. Even if you didn't have a lot of achievements, being recognized by the organization, having internal promotions, all of that makes a difference. And of course, right now the market is shifting. So we are looking for empathy. We are looking for your ability to stay humble and learn from other people. Immigrants and professionals, students, they focus on what they don't have. They don't have Canadian experience, and it becomes their reason for feeling depressed or upset. I encourage them to focus on things that they have as their competitive advantage. For example, they may be flexible on the location. They will do whatever it takes to get to the job on time. They will do whatever it takes to be successful in the role. They may take an afternoon shift. So focus on your flexibility as your competitive advantage, especially when it comes to the financial aspect. So know exactly why you need this job, and remember that when you are in the job. Because I have candidates who want to be employed in order to make their ends meet and to make money. And then they call me 2 weeks later saying that the culture seems to be toxic. And I always tell them, if you don't screen for it, don't complain about it. If you don't ask questions during the interview related to culture or growth, don't expect company to serve it. Remember, if you are here in this industry, in this company, because you want to get your foot in the door, keep that in mind and do your best, because you are also networking by being employed. You are maintaining relationship with your employers. You will need their references going forward. They may introduce you to someone else that they are connected with. Do not burn bridges, and be friendly, smile. Even if you go through dozens of rejections, you still need to have this motivation within you so that it doesn't affect your current performance. You don't come across as desperate. You don't come across as someone who is not friendly or angry. it's all about persistence. And based on my personal statistics, based on who I meet and I talk to people, the number one way of finding the job is basically through online applications. The second way is networking, but without effort, there is no result. You may be investing your time into applying online, but the job will come through networking. You may be networking a lot, helping other people, and then you apply online once and you get this job. Maybe you register yourself with an online portal, but effort needs to be invested. Maybe you invest time in building an exceptional LinkedIn profile. You are active on LinkedIn, you support other people, you motivate them, and your job comes through recruiter reaching out to you through your LinkedIn profile, through your LinkedIn activities. So it may come from an angle where you least expect it, but without investing your resources into all aspects, applying online, networking effectively online, and keeping your presence clear for recruiters to reach out to you, it's really hard to expect success. So it's numbers game in many cases. So that's
brilliant advice, and you're right on the 10-minute mark. Perfect timing.
That was great. Thank you, Tatiana. That was very informative. Next, we're going to hear from Christine. Go ahead, Christine.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is a great opportunity to kind of talk about CAMH, the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, and some of the things that we're currently doing right now with the pandemic. So right now, in terms of some of the highlights for CAMH, we had two separate locations where we were at Queen and Ossington, and then we were also had a location at College and Spadina. So we've gone through major restructuring in terms of having our one place for our patients and our clients to be instead of traveling back and forth. So right now we have two new buildings that have great amenities in terms of bringing people that were working from our College site to our Queen Street site. So it's like a one shop. So we're not going back and forth. And so we had our new location at our Queen and Ossington area. And that's been great because when the pandemic hit, it was a major shift that we had to kind of go through. And, you know, the trends, the models were still the same, but we had to kind of pivot and how we were able to still maintain the patient care and then also recruit for people to still work within CAMH itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a bit about some of the current trends within the healthcare sector, and then also focus in on some of the things to make ourselves competitive. And I think, Tatiana, you mentioned quite a bit, so I don't want to repeat quite a bit of what you're saying, because it's very true, a lot of the things that you've mentioned. So I'll just kind of highlight a bit there. And then I'll also talk a bit about some of the hiring practices within CAMH as well. So the first thing about the trends, I think it's quite universal in terms of across the board with CAMH and then also within the healthcare industry about being patient-centered care, having that. So it's all about the patient, it's all about the client. We have to make sure that we're actively listening, that we're being solution-focused. And then, you know, we're treating the client as a person and not as the problem. So that's some of the skill sets that we're looking for when someone is applying to CAMH. So as long as they're showing patient-centered care, that is one of the things. Another area that we focus on is recovery, making sure that we're instilling empowerment and hope in the client, so that they're able to make the decisions for themselves and that we are not making the decisions for them. So that's one area that is kind of universal for quite a few people, to make sure that people go through that recovery as a journey. And it's always going to be a cyclical event. There may be, you know, a time where someone relapses. That's okay. So as long as we go on that journey and we're going through that recovery model. Another area is our primary care model. That is a continuing of care where, you know, we have our, say, our RNs, our registered nurses, and our registered practical nurses. They team together to make sure that they are partnering together, and they're working in an interprofessional environment where they're working as a team to provide the care for our clients. And that could be with a social worker, that could be with a rec therapist, it could be with the physician itself, it could be with our program assistant. So it's like a team helping the client to go on that recovery journey. And then another area is also diversity. We are very diverse, and that's one of the key values of CAMH is diversity. So what we have to do is we have to incorporate diversity into our practice. How are we able to ensure that we're being trauma informed when we're dealing with the client? We're using equity as an approach when we're helping a client who has divulged that maybe, you know, for religious reasons, you know, they're observing a religion. Maybe, you know, when, for example, if you're, say, you're practicing in the Muslim faith, you know, you're going through, you know, certain times where you abstain from like you're fasting. So when you ask for medication to be applied at a certain time, you have to respect that. So that is some of the things that we have to make sure that we're informed about. And, you know, the ability to access services for people. If English is not your first language, then being able to get a translator to help that client. So even though these are trends within the healthcare and also within CAMH, these are some of the skill sets that we could also utilize when someone is applying for a particular position within CAMH. A lot of the things is that it's incorporated into our postings. So what we can do is you could utilize the information that is in our postings and use that as a tool. So you could prepare your resume and then incorporate some of the information into your resume. So when you're applying, then you have some of the key skills that we're looking for. So that is something too that can make you competitive, because if you have these unique skills and you have these in your resume, then it gives you the opportunity to have your, like, it's like a step in, because you're identifying yourself as having that unique skill. And then to kind of further discuss how to make yourself competitive. And again, I don't want to reiterate a lot of what Tatiana was saying, because it's very much true. Networking is very, very important, because it allows you to kind of do your research, make sure that you're able to know who the point person is, to introduce yourself. So for instance, if there's a posting that you see that you're interested in, and you saw it on LinkedIn, for instance, then you would be able to know who that person is. So say if it's the recruiter, and then you could utilize that and then send them a quick email. Either you could get their contacts and give them a call. Right now, it's a little bit difficult with you know, the lack of social interaction right now, but that phone call is still good. You could still introduce yourself. You can ask someone for their time. So it's a way to leverage yourself again, where you're doing your homework. You're able to make that contact with that particular person, because it's about right now who you know, and also utilizing who they know. So you're kind of furthering your network by kind of introducing yourself to that particular person, and then kind of when you're having that conversation, maybe asking them how they're able to help you, and then they could probably potentially pass you to another individual. So it's always that building, that relationship building with people that you know. And the thing is that I think we have to be realistic in some of the things that we are applying for. A lot of times us recruiters see people just blanket send their resume to a position, and it's not applicable to what the position is. So you definitely have to do your research. You have to know, essentially what you would like to do, and then utilize the position information and make sure you're matching your skill sets with that particular job posting. I always say it's one of the things where you want to kind of utilize some of the information that's in the posting and put that in your cover letter. Because to be quite honest, I still look at cover letters, I still read them, and that gives me an absolute snapshot of somebody who is applying to a job, because right there and then you're using all of the key information and I'm reading it, and I don't essentially have to go to your resume to figure out what you've done, because I've read the cover letter and it's very poignant. You have all the information there. So a lot of people say that, oh, we know cover letters are not important, but for me, I can say that I still read them. In terms of our hiring practices at CAMH, one of the things is that right now with COVID, there is a shortage of nurses, to be quite honest, and there is a shortage of allied professional health people as well. When I say allied professionals, I mean social workers, I mean occupational therapists. We're looking at people who, like program assistants, that actually assist the nurses on the team. We're looking at behavioral therapists. We're looking at recreational therapists. I think I just said that. But there's still a shortage of those people, and we're still actively recruiting for those positions. So I think I don't know if it's one of the things where if you're working with an agency or a program, and I can speak with partnering with Megan in terms of the CARE program, we definitely work together. We have a partnership, and we do look for people who have international experience, because it is relevant. If you have mental health experience that you've done in your home country, and you've worked in a hospital environment, we are still looking at those things. And the thing is that we also provide training. We are affiliated with the University of Toronto, so we have a lot of training that we provide people. So it's not to say that we're only looking for experience that is Canadian experience. We're looking at all experience. We're being wholesome, and we're ensuring that we are getting the best candidate with the best experience. Mental health is no secret, it is challenging, and it is an area that unfortunately, it still has that stigma attached to it. But definitely we will provide training, and we have a professional practice where you're partnered with educators. You are also on a team where there are a lot of people that are passionate about what they do in mental health. So there's a lot of work that we do as a team, and that's something that I've mentioned before, that working in an interprofessional team is quite important, because the thing is that the most important thing is that we're providing care for our clients. So with all the resources that you have available to you working in that team, it is absolutely amazing where you can learn. So yes, I could be, say, a registered nurse on a unit, but I'm working as an interprofessional in an interprofessional team. I know what maybe a social worker does. I know what a behavioral therapist does, because again, we're providing care to that client. So it's very holistic in that sense. So for us at CAMH, we are definitely looking for, all aspects. Yes, we are a hospital. Majority of our positions are, with the nursing, but we definitely have non-union positions. We have positions in IT. We have positions in public affairs, communications. We have an accounting team, finance. HR, and so it's very broad in that sense. And then, as I mentioned, with the front-facing clinicians, definitely, we are looking for us to fill those positions. So we recommend that people go directly onto our site, which is camh.ca, and there is a whole list of positions that you could apply directly to. And definitely, we're looking outside of some of the things like applying directly online. We also are partnering with schools. We're partnering with, as I mentioned, care. We're partnering with outside communities to make sure that we are branching out to find those interested candidates who are interested in working with CAMH. So even though with the pandemic going on, it is still a great opportunity for people to who want to apply to CAMH to apply. And as I said, referrals is great. So if you know someone that's working in CAMH, or again, you want to network, you want to pick up that phone and just ask for, maybe a particular area that you're interested in, because again, CAMH is very broad in what we do. It goes right from from child and youth right through to geriatrics. We have expanded areas into, say, forensics. We have expanded areas into gender, addiction, and mental health. We also have areas that are very much identified with the community as well. So it's something where we want to make sure that we are broad in our scope and make sure that we're able to again make sure that we are partnering with people and we're providing the care that we need right now for our clients, because I think that's the most important thing, is our clients, the care we provide for our clients. And if you're passionate in the mental health area, I think this is a great opportunity for people to reach out and apply.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christina, Shima, and Tatiana for that great presentation. I'm sure I got a lot out of it. I'm sure everybody part of it get a lot out of it. So thank you for that wonderful presentation. Megan, do we have any time for questions?
We do. We've got about, we have about 10 minutes left. Although the last few minutes will be, we'll leave room for evaluation. But I think we probably have time for about 2 or 3 questions. Actually received a private comment. I just wanted to read out part of it, just saying these speakers are absolutely great. So thank you message. And I want to echo what that person said. Thank you so much for your expertise. It was amazing hearing from all of you.
Does anybody have any questions for the panel?
Manoj, is there anything else in the chat?
I don't think but I have my own question.
Perfect.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask how the contents of the resume changed due to COVID, especially when applicants have to deal with perhaps new keywords against ATS.
Yeah, and we can open that up too. Oh, go ahead, Christine, sorry.
So even like I can speak for CAMH, like we do have an ATS, but to be quite honest, it's not that sophisticated to kind of look at keywords and, kind of accept or reject people that way. We do definitely have our questions built into our applications where you do have to identify your education and your experience. But for myself, as I said, it's all the information that's in the resume and also in the cover letter. I think that is still the most important thing, regardless of COVID or not. I think that's your selling tool. I think that is something that you definitely have to still put time into, that you still have to be prepared to put a professional resume together. And as I said myself, I still read them and I still make sure that I am matching the skill sets that is on the job to the person's resume, and then potentially they're shortlisted to the manager, and that's how we begin the process that way.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for that, Christine. Are there any other questions?
There is one question. How does being bilingual help in getting employment?
I can speak for that, because I just actually being bilingual, especially if it is Spanish or French in North America, will help you a lot. In fact, that's what helped my candidate 2 weeks ago, who was an international student from a Spanish-speaking country, and my client organization that is doing commodity trading with Spanish-speaking countries. They were looking for a logistics person who would take care of logistics there locally. So in fact, his Spanish became his competitive advantage, in addition to his personality being good and his willingness to learn and work in the afternoon. So if you have languages that are important for local business in Canada or in the United States, it's great sometimes even to start with that and absolutely put it on your LinkedIn profile. Because if organization is looking for, let's say, customer service, who will be speaking both English and French, they will be searching LinkedIn, filtering profiles based on languages spoken and the proficiency of that. So it's important.
Great.
Thank you for that, Tatiana. Anything else, Manoj? Are there any other questions? Does anybody have a question?
There is no. Okay.
We have two hands. We have two hands raised.
Yeah.
Can I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay. First of all, I would like to, just congratulate the organizers for such an awesome event. I learned quite a bit from Christopher's presentation, and I acknowledge the presentations of Tatiana and Christine were significantly on point, and it gave me the confidence to know that the work that I'm doing is consistent with, I would say, the best practices that's pretty much out there. So I don't have a question per se. I'm just in total agreement with what has been said, and whatever I'm not doing, I'm going to be taking, I've already taken significant note of, the suggestions of the other presenters. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Have a great one.
Appreciate it. Thank you for that comment.
Thank you.
And I think we have time for one more.
Yeah,
did you want to read Cindy's question out?
Yeah. Are recruiters accepting application from overseas job seeker during the pandemic, or do they prioritize people living in Canada?
I can answer that. For us, we are definitely hiring people overseas. I think one of the benefits, very few benefits of our pandemic life is that, the scope of our hiring has exponentially grown globally. So even being able to work remotely from another country is possible now. So we definitely, check out our site, presto.com, are actively hiring. So that's great.
Great, thank you.
Ashima, can I add a little bit to that story, Ashima? I think we still need to educate employers on this opportunity, because there is also, they worry how someone remotely will work for them and how effective this person is. So every time we have a success story like that, I think we should be humbly brag about it. Like if you hired someone from overseas and they are doing a great job, it's nice to share it on social media for others to see and lead by example. I think it's, you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you so much, Tatiana. I think we did an article just a couple of months ago. I'll post it back on my LinkedIn page again, if anyone wants to check it out. And it was a success story about hiring someone from outside of Canada. And we really do, take the work that we do seriously, and being able to sort of bridge those gaps and to hire and give those opportunities and try to reach out to as many people as we can on a global scale.
That's amazing. So I know I said one more question and it was done, but we do have one more hand up. So I'd like to take a final one. Was it Career Foundation? Did you have a question?
Yes, hi, my name is Rebecca Finnemore and I'm with the Career Foundation. And I just wanted to comment in regards to the demand for bilingual speakers. In particular, right now, I'm finding through speaking with employers that there is quite a bit of demand for French speakers, those that can speak English and French. And they're hard to find. So there's definitely a lot of need out there.
Yeah, that's a great comment.
Thank you.
Oh, and I muted myself again. I hope you can all hear me. Thank you so much, everybody. I was going to thank Christian, but he unfortunately had to log off, but I will be thanking him later. And I'd like to say a big thank you to our wonderful guest speakers and panelists, to Ashima and Tatiana and Christine. This was incredibly valuable advice. Thank you to our fantastic AirCAG Employment Resource Connections Action Group members, and everybody who worked so hard to plan the event today. And, you know, a big thanks to Yasmin, Amal, Dominic, and Manoj. We would like to actually add a survey link if anybody, hopefully everybody can just stay a few more minutes. And it would be great if you could fill out the survey evaluation that was just placed by Amal in the chat box. And we will stay on for a few minutes to make sure everybody has the opportunity to click on that link.